The sexual predator Deshaun Watson really struggled again this past season, ranking 22nd out of 35 in expected points added, which if you don't know what that stat is, I have a video that breaks it down. It's awesome because it's useful in determining how well a quarterback's playing, as well as how well the offense or defense is performing as well, so it's very versatile. In addition to not being great in EPA, Watson was also really poor in quarterback rating, ranking 25th out of 35. His supporting cast, which is figured out by looking at PFF receiver and pass blocking grades, was ranked number 30th, so that held him back some. Altogether, he ranked as my 25th best quarterback this past year, so he really needs to be better this upcoming season if the Browns want to be anything this year. At backup quarterback, the Browns are really well set, with both Jameis Winston and Tyler Huntley being both really good options. Winston likely would have been better than the 25th best quarterback in the league this season, and that might be a little bit of a hot take for you, but Winston has put together some good years in his career. It's just mainly been an issue of if he's going to throw too many interceptions or not, which always does seem to rear its ugly head in inopportune moments, but I would trust Winston to be better than the 25th best quarterback with the same weapons that Watson had. At a minimum, too, Tyler Huntley will keep the offense on track if he's tasked with playing, so they're 3 deep at quarterback, which few teams can actually say that they're actually 2 deep. So they do have that going for them. If Watson continues to struggle, I think they're going to give him the benefit of the doubt this year as much as they possibly can because he's still fresh into his contract. But I think if he really continues to stink up the joint, there might be a chance that Winston would get some play time, but I wouldn't bank on that this year. I think that would be much more of a possibility next season. As we shift to the aforementioned supporting cast, if you enjoy this video, make sure you give it a like and also subscribe, because those make massive differences. With that out of the way, the offensive line for Cleveland is really sound, and it's a lot better than it appeared this past season for the reason of them being hurt as badly as they were this past year. With that said, they were still really good in pass blocking, as they were 4th in pass block win rate, which is awesome, obviously, and they were 26th in run block win rate, which is another ESPN stat. So they did struggle a bit in run blocking, but with as many injuries as they faced this year, I don't put too much weight into that. I'm more so really impressed with the fact that they were still able to rank as highly as they did in pass blocking. Compared to last year, they should be a bit better, and that, again, is due to the health factor, with Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills being injured for a good chunk of the season last year. They'll be hopefully healthy this year. Their depth is pretty good, as DeJuan Jones was excellent in filling in for Jack Conklin. Jones is an absolute mountain of a man. He's like 6'8", 350 at least, and he shows it on film. On the interior, they have Zach Zinter, who they drafted in the 3rd this year. Rookie 3rd round interior offensive lineman average a 52 PFF grade, which would be good for 66 out of 88 guards. So it's not crazy to think he could be a solid backup year 1. Regarding their weapons, they're not bad if everyone stays healthy. Amari Cooper is a true number 1 wide receiver, as he was 10th in yards per game and 3rd in yards per reception, which is an incredible stat line. Most players are either chain movers and consistent catchers, so they rank highly in yards per game, or they're deep downfield winners, so they rank highly in yards per reception. But Cooper is both, and he doesn't get talked about nearly enough. The Browns really fleeced the Cowboys because the Cowboys were desperate to move off of Cooper's salary, And I think that's something the Cowboys forever regret, because Cooper is a bona fide stud as a wide receiver, and the Browns got him for basically nothing. As a second option, Jerry Jeudy is a really solid option, being 53rd in yards per game and 30th in yards per reception. He's basically just a worse version of Cooper in that he can be a consistent chain mover, and he can win downfield with some proficiency. He's just not at the level of Cooper in either regard, but as a second option, you could do far worse. Elijah Moore is alright as a number 3, as he was 75th in yards per game and exactly the same 75th in yards per reception as well. He is ultra consistent in that regard, which is, again, something you don't see all the time. So it's kind of unique that the Browns have 3 receivers that are likewise proficient in both yards per game and yards per reception. Moore is actually pretty good as a wide receiver 3. I haven't been too high on him throughout his career, but I think he's finally found a niche as a wide receiver 3. He is a solid option for that regard. At tight end, though, this is where things get more exciting. David Njoku was 5th in yards per game among tight ends and 6th in yards per reception among tight ends, which is elite, as you could probably tell. Njoku is, I think, generally underrated. I don't think if you were doing a top 5 list for tight ends, he would be one of the first tight ends to come to mind, but he should definitely be in that conversation, because obviously you got your Kittles and your Kelseys and Mark Andrews as well. But then Njoku is right there. He's not up to par with Kittle and Kelsey, but I think he's right there with Mark Andrews as a receiving option. And that's saying a lot, because Andrews is a fantastic player. Moving to running back now, Nick Chubb unfortunately missed almost all of last year, but the year prior was 3rd out of 60 halfbacks in PFF grade. He's one of the few running backs that actually makes a difference in wins or losses, as he's just fantastic as a bullying running back. He is nicknamed Quadzilla, and that is with good reason. He is a specimen of a man, and he really shows that on the field. He plays with fantastic strength. He still has really good speed, which is nice because a lot of running backs lose their speed early on into their career. Chubb still has a good deal of it. And overall, Chubb is just really one of the premier options for running back in the league. He's another one that I think we better recognize how good Chubb is in the grand scheme of things, unlike with Njoku. But I think Chubb can sometimes still be underrated a little bit, because for me, he's right there with Derrick Henry for the best pure running back in the NFL. I would still take Christian McCaffrey for what he can do in the receiving game. But as far as just being able to get good, solid yards and also get you a lot of yards in chunks as well, Chubb is just fantastic. Depth-wise, Donta Foreman and Jerome Ford are both quite good at backup options, and that's about all they can rely on. They don't really have a good receiving option or a good backup tight end, so it's mainly the running backs that they have depth with, so they're going to need to stay healthy for receiving options. Moving to the defense now, this is where things really get fun, because at cornerback, the Browns are really well set. Denzel Ward ranked 41st out of 127 corners in PFF grade. He's an athletic freak, too, running a 4.32 40, which is just elite stuff. Some of the best time you'll ever see for any player, regardless of position. So Ward is never going to struggle with deep speed. That's one thing that he has on lock. I think, oppositely of Chubb and Njoku, Ward is a little bit overrated, but with that said, he's still a very solid player. I think some people think he's like a top 10 corner when he's at his best, he definitely is, but this season he wasn't quite up to that standard. Martin Emerson is a very solid number 2. He was graded 66th by PFF. The year prior, he was 23rd out of 118 too, so he has a nice ceiling. He uses his 6'2" frame really nicely, and is physical at the line of scrimmage and downfield to break up balls as well. So it's a nice pairing of Ward, who has the speed, and Emerson, who has the height. They can match up favorably with just about anybody as far as their receiving options go. And really, Ward is not a small player either. He's 5'11", maybe 6 foot. So it's not like he's lacking size either. And at nickel, Greg Newsome II was ranked 55th by PFF. The past 2 years, he was 34th and 32nd, respectively, too. He struggles against the run, and he isn't the size of a normal nickel at 6'1", but he uses that to his advantage a lot of the time and rarely struggles with even shifty wide receivers. So they have a great cornerback trio, and things don't stop at safety either, because at safety, they are also good. Juan Thornhill ranked 51st out of 95 safeties in PFF grade, and is really good against the run, so there's no deficiencies in his game. And Grant Delpit was graded 31st according to PFF. He is the inverse of Thornhill, as Delpit struggles a bit against the run and is great in coverage and can rush the passer a bit as well. It's kind of funny how things work out, as Delpit plays in the box most of the time and isn't that good against the run, whereas Thornhill plays deep a lot but is good against the run. Either way, they have a very talented and versatile safety room, as Delpit played 320 snaps in the box, 180 at slot corner, and 120 deep. So they are able to move around and play solidly across the board. Regarding their defensive back depth, Ronnie Hickman Jr. is a great third safety. He is a very good conventional free safety, as he can cover at a very high level and isn't particularly strong against the run. But again, they don't really have depth, as that's all they have for solid options. On the defensive line, the Browns are terrifying. The conversation starts and probably ends with Myles Garrett, who is one of the biggest freak athletes in the entire league. He is just incredibly jacked. He is incredibly physically imposing, but he's also technically sound as well, which is just the best of all worlds. Garrett finished 7th out of 122 in edge pressures and is also great against the run, so he doesn't lack in any sense of the word. And then as their secondary pass rusher, Zadarius Smith, he's one of the best number 2 rushers in the league. Smith ranked 20th in edge pressures. He's all right against the run, but he really thrives in his versatility, as he can rush as an edge or basically any other lineman. He can be like a middle linebacker and a sugar stance, which is where they're lined up directly over the center to the side a little bit. And he can really get after the quarterback in a variety of ways. Shelby Harris was 32nd out of 142 in defensive interior pressures. He's also really good as a run defender, so they have that going for them. They are pretty well set with their top 3, and then they have a nice 4th option in Dalvin Tomlinson, also, who is a really solid pass rusher, especially for as big as he is. He's about maybe 335 or so. He was 52nd for defensive interior pressures. He struggled against the run this year, surprisingly enough, but is usually a sure bet for good run defense. I checked, he is 325, not 335, but the point remains he's a big boy. And he is usually very sound against the run, but again, just wasn't that great this year. As for their depth on the defensive line, Ogbo Okoronkwo is a premier edge 3. He would be good enough to start on a lot of teams. Maurice Hurst is an elite backup defensive tackle, as he didn't play much last year, but was great in the reps he did get. They also drafted Mike Hall Jr. in the second as another defensive tackle. Historically, second-round rookie defensive tackles average a 56 PFF grade, which would be good for 87th out of 142 defensive interior. So he has the chance to contribute early on also, which would be just perfect for the Browns. They would have the elite high-end starters, and they'd have even more depth to go alongside that also. Shifting to the linebacking core, it is also exceptional for Cleveland. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah ranked 18th out of 82 linebackers in PFF grade. He is super versatile, as he is solid against the run, great as a pass rusher, and very good in coverage too. He's a rare linebacker that's really able to cover tight ends in space, and he does so with ease a lot of the time because he's just a silky smooth mover. He can cover tight ends, even some wide receivers as well. He is a linebacker that covers players, not just grass, which is a line I've coined from that franchise guy. And that really does tell the story, as there are a lot of linebackers that can just play a zone but not really do anything in said zone, but JOK is more than alright at covering the players that are in the zone he's responsible for. A similar player is Jordan Hicks, who was 22nd in PFF grade. He is quite good against the run and in coverage, so neither linebacker can be tested, which is kind of the worst for opposing offenses because you have this fantastic defensive line that gets after you incredibly quickly, and then you can't even throw at the linebackers as quick reads because they're covering very well. So you're going to have to beat the cornerbacks, and that's easier said than done because they have some good cornerbacks. The depth at linebacker for the Brownies is also good, as Devin Bush has been a disappointing player, but he remains a solid backup linebacker. If he can return to year one form, where he was like an average to maybe a little bit above average linebacker, the Browns will be tremendously set because they can go 3 deep at linebacker, which very few teams can. But either way, they should be pretty well set because Bush has had some of the worst tape you'll ever see for a linebacker, but has also been a fine player at times also. In all, the Browns are absolutely stacked. If they could get even decent play from Deshaun Watson, they'll be squarely in the mix for the AFC. That's not guaranteed, though, as he's been trashed lately, about as bad as a person as he is. As for his supporting cast, Cleveland has a very good offensive line and good enough weapons, especially if Nick Chubb returns to form. Defensively, they're about as good as anyone. Their defensive backs are super good and all returning, so they are building chemistry. Their defensive line is ferocious, star-studded and deep. Their linebackers are modern prototypes, being super versatile and great in coverage. If they can stay healthy in areas where they don't have great depth like wide receiver and cornerback, they should compete with anybody because they're also super well coached, with Jim Schwartz being a premier defensive coordinator, and they also have a good head coach as well. Those are my thoughts on the Browns. Be sure to let me know what yours are in the comment section, and also be sure to like and subscribe for more NFL content.